Happiness and Money? Part 2. Investing in your health is the best way to spend money. One day, a friend of mine had serious health problems, and despite a good salary of $120,000 a year, he faced huge medical bills. This made me think about where I was spending my money, so I decided to invest in my health. I hired a trainer, signed up for yoga, started eating right, and paying more attention to my body. Although I now spend more on these things than before, I feel much better physically and mentally. The money I invested in my health came back to me in the form of energy and happiness, and I realized that this was the best investment. Stress in a high-paying job and peace of mind after leaving. After college, I landed a pretty prestigious job at a consulting firm, where my starting salary was $90,000 a year. My entire family was incredibly proud, and I myself thought that I had finally achieved happiness. But the daily deadlines, incessant calls, and business trips across the country began to wear me down. After 2 years, my salary rose to $130,000, but I stopped feeling happy at all. I felt more and more stressed every day, and sleepless nights became the norm. Eventually, I quit and went to work for a local company, where I now earn $60,000. I have a lot less money, but I am happier because I now have time for myself, hobbies, and friends. My grandmother's happiness did not depend on money. My grandmother was the happiest person I have ever known, although her income never exceeded $20,000 a year. She lived in a small house and worked as a school cleaner for most of her life. Despite financial difficulties, she always found joy in the little things. Hanging out with neighbors, growing roses in her garden, knitting for her grandchildren. I think her happiness was connected with the feeling of contentment and the love she gave and received. She never needed a lot of money to be happy. Today, when I see people striving for big money, I remember my grandmother and realize that material wealth is not everything. Investment failure and the realization of the value of security. A few years ago, I decided to invest my savings in a friend's startup. It was a big sum for me, $50,000 that I had been saving for years. At the time, I thought it was a great way to make even more money and finally afford everything I dreamed of. But the startup didn't work out, and all my money went down the drain. This experience was a harsh lesson for me, and eventually I realized that money shouldn't be a source of constant risk. Now I put money into a retirement account and invest only in proven options. Although I lost the chance to get rich easy, I now feel more secure, and that's what true happiness is for me. My mother was able to make me happy even without a lot of money. When I was a child, my mother worked as a nurse and earned about $40,000 a year. It was not easy, especially when it came to my education, buying clothes, and everything else I needed. But she always found ways to make my days special. She sewed my clothes herself, cooked incredible meals from simple ingredients, and always found time to play and hang out together. Although we could not afford expensive things, I felt incredibly happy as a child because of her love and care. She taught me that happiness is not about the amount of money, but about what you do with what you have. Giving up the career race for the sake of family. When I was 30, I was working for a corporation and making good money, about $95,000 a year. I was offered a promotion that would have increased my salary to $150,000, but I knew it would require even more of my time and energy. At that time, my wife was pregnant, and I decided to turn down the offer in order to spend more time with my family. It was a difficult decision, since money always seems important, but I realized that no dollar would replace the time I would spend with my child. Now that I see my son growing up, I realize that this decision made me happier than any career peak. Moving to a smaller city for quality of life. I lived in New York for a long time, where I earned about $110,000 a year. Life there was expensive, and despite the high salary, I often felt that I could not afford real comfort. Rent, utilities, food, everything was so expensive that the money was gone almost instantly. Eventually, my wife and I decided to move to a smaller city, and I found a job with a salary of $75,000. But since moving, my life has changed dramatically. We have a house, a spacious garden, and most importantly, peace. We can finally save, travel, and just enjoy life. And I realized that money is not always the main component of happiness. The new car didn't make me happy. After getting a promotion at work, I decided to finally buy my dream car, an expensive SUV, for $70,000. I was sure it would bring me happiness. I was really excited for the first month, but soon the excitement began to fade, and then the realization that I now had to pay huge mortgage payments set in. Every month, I felt the pressure, and my $85,000 salary no longer seemed so big. This made me realize that things, no matter how desirable, do not bring long-term happiness if they come with debt and stress. Now I try not to give in to material desires and invest money in experiences and time with my family. My pension is not about money, but about the opportunity to live in peace. I am 67 now and retired with about $600,000 in savings. It is not millions, but it is enough to live comfortably without having to worry about bills and debts every day. But the most important thing for me is that I can spend time with my family, garden, go to the park, and just enjoy life. I am not super rich, but I am happy because I have stability and time for everything that brings me joy. Knowing that I am not dependent on work and can afford to relax and enjoy life is true happiness. The decision to become a volunteer changed my perception of money and happiness. After 10 years of working in a corporate job and earning around $120,000, I suddenly realized that I felt nothing, no joy, no satisfaction. I quit my job and decided to try volunteering. It wasn't easy. My new job only paid $40,000, and I had to cut back on my expenses. But I helped the homeless, organized charity events, and began to feel more complete as a person. This brought me real happiness because I saw the result of my efforts, and my money, albeit smaller, was used to help others. This experience showed me that happiness can be found not in accumulating wealth, but in using your abilities to benefit others. Giving up corporate work for a hobby. When I was 28, I was working for a large company and earning $100,000 a year. My hobby, making furniture, always seemed like a frivolous hobby to me. But one day I decided to take a risk. I quit my job and started making furniture for sale. At first, my profit was only $35,000 a year, which forced me to cut back on expenses. But as my workshop grew, I began to receive more orders, and my work began to bring me not only income, but also great pleasure. Now I earn $60,000, which is significantly less than my corporate income, but every day I do what I love. My happiness came not from a large income, but from the inner satisfaction that I am doing something of my own. The best investment is education. When I was 25, I felt stuck in a dead-end job. I was making about $45,000 a year, and my salary was growing very slowly. So I decided to invest some of my savings in an MBA. It cost me $80,000 and a lot of time. Some of my friends doubted that it was worth it. But for me, education was a ticket to a better future. After completing the program, I got a job at a large company and now earn $120,000. But most importantly, I felt self-confidence, which has become a source of happiness for me. I was able to create a better future myself, and realizing this makes me happier every day. The neighbor with the yacht and his constant dissatisfaction with life. I live in a coastal area, and my neighbor has a big yacht. He works in real estate and makes over $500,000 a year. I always thought he was the happiest person because he had everything he could ever want. But when we talked one day, he admitted that he felt exhausted and constantly unhappy with his life. All these things, yachts, houses, expensive cars, just create an external facade of success. But in reality, he is unhappy because he works too much and hardly sees his family. This made me realize that happiness does not come from things. It comes from an internal sense of contentment. Refusing to spend on unnecessary things and simplicity as a path to happiness. At some point, I realized that I was spending too much on all sorts of nonsense. Subscriptions that I didn't need, more gadgets, dinners at expensive restaurants. My salary is about $80,000, and it allows me to make all these purchases, but it didn't add to my happiness. As a result, I decided to clean up my expenses and left only what really brings me joy. I started cooking more at home, spending time in nature, reading books. Surprisingly, with each reduction in unnecessary expenses, I felt happier because I finally began to appreciate simplicity and got rid of the pressure of the material world. Happiness, as it turned out, is in the ability to find joy in little things and not in the number of things. Trade financial stability for creative freedom. My office job was making a steady income of $75,000 a year. But with each passing year, I felt like I was losing myself. I had always loved writing and dreamed of becoming an author, but I was afraid to quit my job for fear of being left broke. At some point, I decided to take a risk and take a year off to write full-time. My income dropped dramatically, and I was making about $30,000 freelancing, but it gave me the creative freedom I craved. My first book was published 2 years later, and now I'm back to earning a decent income, but as a writer. I found happiness in allowing myself to follow my dreams rather than material expectations. Investing in travel instead of savings. When I turned 40, I realized I had about $200,000 in savings. It was good money, but I felt like my days were routine, so I decided I wanted to see the world. I decided to spend $50,000 on traveling. Over the next 2 years, I visited over 20 countries and experienced so many new things that I still feel alive. I danced at festivals in Brazil, ate sushi in Japan, and enjoyed sunsets in Greece. These moments were true happiness for me. Money spent on experiences was a better investment in my life than just saving in a bank account. Losing status for the sake of small business happiness. When I worked as a manager in a large corporation, I felt that I had prestige and high status. My salary was about $150,000 per year. But every day I realized that I was wasting time and nerves on something that did not interest me at all. Then I decided to take a risk and opened a small coffee shop in my area. Yes, now my income has dropped to $60,000, and I can no longer afford everything I used to, but my coffee shop has become a real source of happiness for me. Every day I communicate with regular customers, make coffee that I love, and feel that I am doing something really worthwhile. Now I live more modestly, but surprisingly, I feel much happier. Investing in health is the key to happiness after the crisis. After turning 40, I started to feel that my health was deteriorating, constant back pain, weight problems, poor sleep. My $95,000 a year job left me no time to take care of myself. So I decided to invest in my health. I hired a personal trainer, started doing yoga, and gave up junk food. All this cost money, but the effect was amazing. I started to feel much better. My energy level increased, and my mood became positive. Investing in my health was the most important decision that brought me happiness, because now I can enjoy life and my body without illness and fatigue. Unexpected happiness in a simple life. I moved from a big city to a small suburb with my wife and 2 kids. I used to make $100,000 a year and wanted to do more, but the constant stress and competition were destroying my mental health. Now I work remotely and make about $65,000. We live a much simpler life, but my family has become happier. The kids play in the yard. We have a garden where we grow vegetables. I finally stopped feeling the pressure and now feel an inner satisfaction that I live in harmony with myself and my loved ones. Happiness turned out to be in simplicity and not in the constant pursuit of more income.